And when I came to Richmond, I started off with a hair braiding salon in the early 80s, which wasn't popular. But how I started cooking was I used to prepare food for my clients because they would sit in the chair for 10 hours, and so I would cook. And then, they'll have dinner with me. And then after that, they would start calling me saying, "Chef, I'm coming to get my hair done. Can you feed my family?" And I was like, no, I was just going to give you some food, though. And they're like, "No, what you fixed the last time, can you fix it for 5 people, 10 people? And then I started slowly doing that. My presentation today, I'm doing plantains medleys. Now, plantains medleys can be eaten as a side dish, or it can also be eaten as a main dish. But I'm going to do it vegetarian style today, and you can always add whatever meats you want. So we're going to talk a little bit about plantains. Plantains is not a fruit. It is actually part of the vegetables family, because mainly you cannot eat it raw. You have to cook it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start with the plantain.
Has anyone out there ever cooked plantain before?
I'm sure
A couple people have,
okay.
yeah.
So this is kind of ripe, but it's firm. And so we're going to start with the plantains. We're going to cut it up in little cubes.
So you want to look for some that aren't green, right? Because sometimes you see the green plantains.
You can use the green plantains, but for something else. Let's say during the wintertime now that a lot of people cook soups, at home, the green plantains can serve as dumplings. So you can drop the green plantains into your soup, and it's better than white potatoes or whatever, and it has a little nice sweet taste to it. So I do that myself when I'm cooking like bean soup or just vegetable soup. I'll drop some green plantains, cut it up in there. As sometimes we do white potatoes, I use plantains instead.
Now, is this something that your grandmother taught you to cook?
Yes. Well, plantains is very, very popular in West Africa. It's one of the vegetables that you will find throughout West Africa, and we eat it different ways. Different countries call it different names. In Liberia, we call this particular dish Kelewele. And some countries call it dodo. Some call it different names depending on the tribe that they're from. But we call this particular dish Kelewele. So what we're going to do with the plantains, we're going to put it in. I have my vegetable oil that I use, and I prefer vegetable oil because it's very light. Sometimes people use olive oil, but olive oil is very heavy. We're going to try, this is something new that I decided to add on to plantains. I decided this is my specialty now. I decided to add some mangoes into my plantain medleys, which wouldn't be normal. But for me, I always do something different. So we're going to do, the mango that I'm using is not very ripe because I need it to be firm in my dish. So I needed something a little bit tangy. So I decided to use mangoes, but actually the semi-ripe mangoes. So what I'll do right now is chopped up my mangoes in little cubes also. Now in your medleys, I have created my special spices that will be added to your medleys. I have thyme, parsley, rosemary, cayenne, a little bit of cayenne, and I also have a little bit of ginger blended all together in my spices that I'm going to add to my medleys. Also, I have steamed some vegetables, carrots, peas, corn, string beans to add to my medleys. And I have some peppers and onions also that are going to be sauteed to add to my plantains. So once the plantains are brown and ready to go, I will saute all of that with my mangoes and then add my plantains to it and my spices, and there will be a dish. The thing about plantain is it's such a great vegetable that I like because it's also very starchy, but it's not that bad where you will gain a lot of weight from it if you eat a lot of it. What it does is helps with your potassium. It's very good for people that have low iron also. It's very high in iron. So this is a very good vegetable that you can eat all the time. You know, my suggestion is not to eat the plantain chips a lot because it's the green plantains and it's very starchy. So, I love plantain chips, but I don't eat it a whole lot. But I would suggest the best way to do plantains is to steam it. Steam it, roast it. You can fry it, but make sure that you fry it in very, very light oil. I don't cook with salt, so I really don't use that. But you can use whatever you want in terms of your taste. You can cook it to your taste, so you can use whatever you want to do. But I always use natural seasoning like thyme because of the flavor, high in flavor, thyme, parsley, rosemary, cayenne. Those type of flavors, those type of spices are also healing spices. So I use those a lot, and even in my restaurant, I use those spices every day, especially ginger. Mm-hmm. I use ginger a lot, and in almost everything that I prepare, because ginger is very good for the stomach, it's very good for digestion. So I use ginger a lot. Over the years, I have tried to make a lot of dishes that you can eat with meat and without meat, so they don't have to miss it. So the same taste you're going to get if you had curry chicken with chicken. You can have the curry without the chicken, but it would taste the same. And so I had to work on that for years because I was very interested in feeding vegetarians, even though I do meats, but I was very interested in that aspect of that because vegetarian is a special class of people. And a lot of times they would tell me that we can't find good vegetarian restaurants, or the food don't really taste, well, because they don't have meats and other stuff in it. So sometimes people have a problem going to restaurants. And so I had to blend a lot of African spices and herbs in order to create vegetarian dishes. And now, when you go to my restaurant, there are a lot of dishes that you will eat that are purely vegetarian dishes. As you can see, this is your plantains. You want to make sure that they're all golden brown. So now what we're going to do is saute all of our vegetables and add our plantains to it. So we're first going to add our peppers and onions.
Now, are those sweet peppers or hot peppers, or
it's
some
sweet
of both?
Peppers. These sweet peppers. We're
if you wanted to make it a little spicy, you could put some hot peppers in it?
Exactly. We're going to add our vegetables. And we're going to add our mangoes.
Could you tell us what's in the spice mix one more time?
We have thyme, parsley, rosemary, cayenne, and some little dry red peppers. Now, it's not spicy at all because I'm feeding different sets of people, so I try not to make it too hot. For you, if you can do whatever you want to do in terms of your own spices. So as you can see, I just added my plantains into my medleys. And so you just constantly stir fry it, very low heat. Just keep at it until your onions are not very, very mushy, but kind of crunchy, but cooked. Mm-hmm. That you can actually see the onions and see all your vegetables in there.
So that's kind of your bellwether is the onions to see if they're done, then everything else should be ready too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once the onions are ready, then everything should be. But you don't overcook this at all. Once you fry your plantains, the rest of the vegetable is just stir fry.
So I wanted to ask you another question about the history of your family, because it's quite interesting that your family, some of them came from Virginia actually and moved back to Africa. Is that correct? At some point in the history?
See, at some point in the history, my grandmother was part of the free slaves that left in the back in the 1800s. and they originally came from Reston, Virginia, and she was partially Cherokee, and her maiden name was Etheridge. And she's always used to say, when you go to United States, go to Reston. But she didn't know where that was. But we found out that Reston is part of Virginia. Yes.
So your family's gone back and forth between Africa and Virginia.
Going and back.
It's
but
a wonderful,
you know what?
history.
It's so fascinating that when I came to Virginia, it was so familiar to me. I thought I was like back home, because in Liberia we have Broad Street, we have Carey Street, we have Ashman Street. We have a lot of places in Liberia that was given to us by the slaves, because it was founded by slaves. So we have a lot of those places in Liberia that was very familiar to me. Even when I talk to people and I said, wow, you look just like my Aunt Susie or Aunt Janie or something, because it was just so familiar to how we were raised in Liberia from the free slaves. So this is what basically a medley would look like.
It's beautiful. Let's have a round of applause for that.
Let me kind of hold this.